Hi everyone, I'm going to go over the 27 evidence-based practices for autism spectrum disorder, and I'm going to go through these kind of fast just due to the time constraints. So these 27 practices are taken from a 2014 report that was the evidence-based practices for children, youth, and young adults with autism spectrum disorder. This report was supported by the United States Department of Education, the Office of Special Education Programs, the National Professional Development Center on Autism Spectrum Disorders, and the Institute of Education Science. So the purpose of this report was to describe a process for the identification of evidence-based practices and also to delineate practices that have sufficient empirical support to be termed evidence-based. So antecedent-based intervention is the arrangement of events or circumstances that precedes the occurrence of an interfering behavior and designed to lead to the reduction of the behavior. Cognitive behavioral intervention is instruction on management or control of cognitive processes that lead to changes in overt behavior. It's based on the premise that thoughts create feelings, feelings create behavior, and that behavior reinforces thoughts. Differential reinforcement of alternative, incompatible, or other behaviors. So the provision of this positive desirable consequences for behavior or their absence that reduce the occurrence of an undesirable behavior. So your reinforcement is provided when the learner is engaged in a specific behavior other than the inappropriate behavior, or when the learner is engaged in a behavior that's physically impossible to do while exhibiting the inappropriate behavior, or when the learner is not engaging in the interfering behavior. So I like this chart here. It says independent work time, and so if the child throws a book on the floor, they get attention from the teacher. So you're actually reinforcing that throwing the book on the floor. But when they're completing the problem in the book, they're not getting attention from the teacher. And then on the other hand, if you're giving attention when they're completing the problem in the book, you're reinforcing that behavior. And when they throw the book on the floor, you ignore that. Discrete trial teaching. Instructional process usually involves one teacher, service provider, and one student client, and is designed to teach appropriate behavior of skills. So the instruction would be, look at me. The response from the student is the student looks at you, and then the reinforcer is good looking, and maybe she gives him a high five. Exercise. So an increase in physical exertion as a means of reducing problem behaviors or increasing appropriate behavior. And it's an evidence-based practice that has been shown to reduce challenging behavior and increase engagement of students. Extinction. So withdrawal or removal of reinforcers of interfering behavior in order to reduce the occurrence of that behavior. So it's removing reinforcement from an undesirable behavior. Functional behavioral assessment. It's the systematic collection of information about an interfering behavior designed to identify functional contingencies that support the behavior. So it consists of direct observation. Also, they do interviews and questionnaires, and then there's a functional analysis that looks at the antecedents and the consequences of the behavior so that those can be understood. Functional communication training. It's the replacement of an interfering behavior that has a communication function with a more appropriate communication that accomplishes the same function. So let's say the behavior is the child hits mother. The function of that behavior is the child wants to go for a ride in the car. So the functional communication training that would take place was that you would teach the child how to sign car as a request. Modeling. Demonstration of desired target behavior that results in imitation of the behavior by the learner and that leads to the acquisition of the imitated behavior. It's usually combined with other strategies such as prompting and reinforcement. Naturalistic interventions are intervention strategies that occur within the typical setting, activities, routine in which the learner participates. Teachers or service providers establish the learner's interest in learning events through arrangement of the settings, activities, or routine, provide necessary support for the learner to engage in the targeted behavior, elaborate on the behavior when it occurs, and/or arrange natural consequences for the targeted behavior or skill. Parent-implemented intervention. Parents provide individualized intervention to their child to improve or increase a wide variety of skills and/or to reduce interfering behaviors. Parents learn to deliver interventions in their home and/or the community through a structured parent training program. Peer-mediated instruction and interventions. So typically developing peers interact with and/or help children and youth with autism spectrum disorder to acquire new behavior, communication, and social skills by increasing social and learning opportunities within the natural environment. Teachers, service providers systematically teach peer strategies for engaging children and youth with autism spectrum disorder in a positive and extended social interactions in both teacher-directed and learner-directed activities. Picture Exchange Communication System, also known as PECS. Learners are initially taught to give a picture of a desired item to a communicative partner in exchange for the desired item. PECS consists of 6 phases, which are how to communicate, distance and persistence, picture discrimination, sentence structure, responsive requesting, and commenting. Pivotal response training. Pivotal response training targets pivotal areas of a child's development. These include motivation, response to multiple cues, self-management, and the initiation of social interactions. So the philosophy of this is that by targeting these critical areas, PRT will produce broad improvements across other areas of sociability, communication, behavior, and academic skill building. Prompting. Verbal, gestural, or physical assistance given to learners to assist them in acquiring or engaging in targeted behavior or skill. Prompts are usually given by an adult or peer before or as a learner attempts to use a skill. Reinforcement. An event, activity, or other circumstance occurring after a learner engages in desired behavior that leads to the increased occurrence of the behavior in the future. And I really like this picture here that I posted. It says, if you've met one child with autism, you've only met one child. The same holds true for reinforcers. They are very individual and one size does not fit all. So you really have to know your student and have to figure out what is reinforcing for them. Response, interruption, redirection. So this starts with you interrupt the problem behavior, you redirect towards the appropriate behavior, you reinforce approximations of the appropriate behavior. Scripting. It's a verbal or written description about a specific skill or situation that serves as a model for the learner. Scripts are usually practiced repeatedly before the skill is used in the actual situation. And this script here is going to the doctor's office. So it's giving the script to the learner, so they're saying, "Hello, I have an appointment. Can you please sign me in?" So it's giving them all the words to say before the actual event. Self-management systems. Instructions focusing on learners discriminating between appropriate and inappropriate behaviors, accurately monitoring and recording their own behavior, and rewarding themselves for behaving appropriately. And I found this visual that I really love for self-management. It's like a checklist for learners. It goes through different skills, and then they can check it off as they do it so they can self-monitor themselves. Social narratives, I won't spend a lot of time on this one. We did this in class. Narratives that describe social situations in some detail by highlighting relevant cues and offering examples of appropriate responding. Social narratives are individualized according to learner needs and typically are quite short, perhaps including pictures or other visual aids. Social skills training. This group or individualized instruction designed to teach learners with autism spectrum disorders ways to appropriately interact with peers, adults, and other individuals. So most social skills meetings include instruction on basic concepts, role-playing or practice, and feedback to help the learner with autism spectrum disorder acquire and practice communication, play, or social skills to promote positive interactions with peers. Structured playgroups. Small group activities characterized by their occurrence in a defined area and with a defined activity, the specific selection of typically developing peers to be in the group, a clear delineation of theme and roles by adults, leading, prompting, or scaffolding as needed to support the student's performance related to the goals of the activity. Task analysis, a process in which an activity or behavior is divided into small, manageable steps in order to assess and teach the skill. Other practices such as reinforcement, video modeling, or time delay are often used to facilitate acquisition of the smaller steps. So it could be a first then strip, it could be longer than a first then strip, anything that just breaks down the task into manageable parts. Technology-aided instruction and intervention. So instruction or interventions in which technology is the central feature supporting the acquisition of a goal for the learner. Technology is defined as any electronic item, equipment, application, or virtual network that is used intentionally to increase, maintain, and or improve daily living, work, productivity, and recreation leisure capabilities of adolescents with autism spectrum disorder. Time delay. In a setting or activity in which a learner should engage in a behavior or skill, a brief delay occurs between the opportunity to use the skill and any additional instructions or prompts. The purpose of the time delay is to allow the learner to respond without having to receive a prompt, and thus focusing on fading the use of the prompts during instructional activities. Video modeling. A visual model of the targeted behavior or skill, typically in the behavior, communication, play, or social domains, provided via video recording and display equipment to assist learner in or engaging in a desirable behavior or skill. The last evidence-based practice is visual support. A visual supports any visual display that supports the learner engaging in a desired behavior or skill independent of prompts. Examples of supports include pictures, written words, objects within the environment, arrangement of the environment or visual boundaries, schedules, maps, labels, organization systems, and timelines.